My sister Lydia went out of her way to make sure everyone at her wedding saw me as the sad, single one. She stuck me at the leftover table, introduced me as still searching, and even had her bridesmaids gossip about my love life. But when a mysterious man leaned in and whispered, "Just pretend you're with me," her flawless day became the stage for my perfect revenge. If you've ever been humiliated by family for being single, smash that like button. And subscribe if you believe karma has a way of showing up when you least expect it, because this story is proof that sometimes the sweetest revenge comes with a side of undeniable jealousy. The reception hall glimmered under golden lights and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Yet all I could focus on was the little card in my hand, table 12. The singles table, the reject table, the exact spot Lydia had chosen so everyone would know her older sister was still alone. I'm Hannah, and maybe I should start by explaining how I became the family's built-in disappointment at my own sister's fairy tale wedding. Lydia and I were never particularly close, but ever since she got engaged to Richard, a wealthy investment banker, our rivalry had turned toxic. She'd made it her mission to remind me I was 32 and still single. "Maybe try dating apps again," she'd say at family dinners, feigning concern. "You can't be picky forever, Hannah. The clock's ticking." Mom would nod in sympathy while Dad awkwardly changed the subject, but Lydia never let it go. It was like my single status validated her happiness. The morning of her wedding, she called with her idea of sisterly advice. "Hannah, honey, I know today might be hard," she said, her voice dripping in condescension. "Seeing everyone so happy and in love. Just try not to look too miserable in the photos, okay? And please don't spend the night glued to the bartender like at Cousin Joanne's wedding." That should have been my first clue about what was coming. When I arrived at the Grandview Manor, wearing the perfect navy dress I'd spent weeks picking out, Lydia's maid of honor Marion came up with a clipboard and that smile people wear before delivering bad news. "Oh, Hannah, let me take you to your table," she said with the same syrupy sweetness Lydia had mastered. Table 12 was shoved in the back corner near the kitchen doors where servers darted in and out with trays of food. My tablemates were Lydia's single coworkers who barely acknowledged me, and our elderly great-aunt Janet, who spent the evening complaining about the music and asking if I'd ever considered lowering my standards. But the real humiliation began during the introductions. The party was in full swing when Lydia decided to parade me around like some cautionary tale. She hooked her arm around mine and led me to a group of Richard's wealthy relatives. "And this is my sister, Hannah," she announced proudly, clinging to Richard's arm like she was staking her claim. "She's our little career girl, still focused on work instead of finding someone special." The group smiled politely as heat rose to my face. Richard's aunt, Mrs. Wellington, gave me a pitying look. "Oh, dear, don't worry," she said, patting my arm. "There's someone for everyone. Have you tried church groups? My nephew met his wife at a prayer circle." Lydia laughed, not a warm laugh, but the sharp laugh of someone relishing another's discomfort. "Hannah's very independent." "Aren't you, sis?" she said, making independent sound like an illness. "I just haven't met the right person yet," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You can't wait forever," Richard's mother, Margaret, chimed in. "My daughter waited too long, and now she's 45 with fertility problems. Don't make the same mistake." For the next hour, I endured a steady stream of unsolicited dating advice from Lydia's friends and Richard's family. Joseph, his business partner, suggested I lower my expectations. Christopher, a family friend, told me about his spinster aunt who finally married a widower with 6 kids at age 50. Even the photographer seemed in on it. When it was time for family photos, he kept asking if I had a +1 and looked genuinely puzzled when I said no. The breaking point came during the bouquet toss. All the single ladies to the dance floor. The DJ shouted with an enthusiasm that felt like a personal jab. I tried to hide behind a marble pillar, but Marion spotted me and grabbed my arm. "Come on, Hannah. This could be your lucky day." Suddenly, I was standing in a circle of 20-somethings, Richard's younger cousins, fresh out of college with their whole lives ahead of them. I felt awkward and exposed. Lydia smirked directly at me before tossing the bouquet far in the opposite direction. It landed in the hands of a 24-year-old named Chloe, and the crowd cheered. Lydia hugged her and announced loudly, Looks like Hannah will have to wait a little longer. The laughter that followed sliced through me like broken glass. People looked at me with that mix of pity and relief you see when someone else becomes the evening's punchline. I fled back to my table, blinking back tears of rage and humiliation. This was supposed to be a celebration of love, but Lydia had turned it into a public execution of my self-esteem. I was seconds from slipping out quietly, sparing myself the sight of her smug grin, when a deep voice spoke behind me. "Act like you're with me." I turned, startled, to see a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. He was tall, at least 6 feet 2 inches, with dark hair and a quiet confidence that drew eyes from across the room. His gaze was kind but focused, and there was something magnetic about the way he... "Excuse me," I whispered back as he slid effortlessly into the seat beside me. "Your sister just spent the last 10 minutes telling my colleague how worried she is about you being alone," he said smoothly. "I'm assuming you didn't ask her to share your personal life with strangers." He was right. Across the room, I spotted Lydia gesturing toward me as she spoke animatedly to a cluster of Richard's friends, probably explaining how pitiful it was that I couldn't find anyone to love me. "You don't mind, do you?" he asked. His voice carried more certainty than question, like he'd already decided where this was going. I shook my head, caught too off guard to speak. For the first time that evening, I didn't feel invisible. "I'm William," he said, extending his hand with an easy smile. "Richard's cousin from Boston. And you must be Hannah, the sister who apparently needs rescuing from lifelong spinsterhood." Despite myself, I laughed. "That's me, the family charity case." "Well, not anymore," he replied, with a grin that was both comforting and slightly mischievous. William draped his arm casually across the back of my chair and leaned closer, speaking to me like we'd known each other forever. Heads began to turn almost instantly. Lydia, mid-conversation with the wedding planner, glanced over and froze. Her polished smile wavered for a beat before she excused herself and glided toward our table, her gown's train trailing behind her like a weapon. "Hannah," she called, her voice pitched unnaturally high. "I didn't realize you knew William." "Old friends," William answered without missing a beat, brushing his hand lightly over mine on the table. "We lost touch for a while, but you know how life goes." Lydia's eyes narrowed just slightly, her perfect composure cracking. "Really? Hannah never mentioned you." "I try to keep my private life private," I said, finally finding both my voice and some confidence. "You know how I am about work-life balance." The irony wasn't lost on me. Lydia had spent the whole night airing my supposed failures, and now she was prying into a relationship that didn't even exist. "How wonderful," Lydia said, though her tone betrayed the opposite. "So, how long have you two been reconnecting?" "Long enough," William replied with a smile that revealed nothing yet suggested everything. As Lydia walked away, clearly frustrated by the lack of answers, William leaned toward me with a conspiratorial whisper. "She looks like she just bit into a lemon." I couldn't help but smile. She's not used to being left out of my life, or being upstaged. "Good," he said with quiet satisfaction. "Let's keep her guessing." For the next hour, William played the role flawlessly. He brought drinks from the bar, laughed at my jokes, and brushed his hand against mine just enough to make it believable. But more than that, he listened. Really listened. He asked about my marketing job, my love for hiking, and my recent trip to Ireland. "You're not what I expected," he said during a lull between songs. "What did you expect?" "Based on your sister's version of you." "Someone desperate and pitiful," he said bluntly. "But instead, here I am with someone smart, funny, and honestly, I can't figure out why you're single." "Because I have standards," I blurted out without hesitation. He laughed, warm and genuine, loosening something inside me. "Good for you." By then, Lydia was openly staring from across the room. I saw her whispering to Marion, who kept sneaking curious glances at us. Richard's relatives, who had brushed me off earlier, were now watching William with interest and approval, clearly noting his stature and wondering how I'd managed to catch someone like him. The revenge was sweeter than I could have imagined. And yet William wasn't finished. When the band began to play a slow tune, he stood, offered his hand, and said with quiet confidence, "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Out on the dance floor, His hand on my waist and mine resting on his shoulder, I felt the weight of every gaze from people who'd offered me their unsolicited advice. But instead of shrinking under it, I felt shielded. William moved with a natural rhythm, as though dance lessons had been second nature to him, and being in his arms felt unexpectedly easy. "Your sister is watching," he murmured. "I know," I replied. "She looks like she's about to explode." "Mission accomplished," he said with a grin. I looked up at him, this stranger who, with one simple gesture, had given me back my dignity. Almost. That's when Lydia struck. She appeared beside us with Richard in tow. Her smile stretched so tight it almost cracked. "Mind if I cut in?" she asked, her voice sugared but sharp. "Actually, yes," William replied, polite but firm. Lydia's face flickered through several emotions before she plastered on a too bright smile. "Of course. I only wanted to say how thrilled I am that Hannah finally found someone. We've all been worried about her. Haven't you?" William's voice was calm, but his sharp gaze cut through the false sweetness. "Funny," he continued, "because from what I've seen tonight, you've been far more eager to highlight her single status than to actually support her." The bluntness of his words left Lydia momentarily speechless. Richard shifted beside her, visibly uneasy, but clearly clueless about the tension in the air. We just care about Hannah's happiness," Lydia stuttered, her poise beginning to crack. "Then perhaps you should treat her with the respect she deserves," William replied smoothly, "instead of turning her love life into a sideshow for your wedding guests." I had never witnessed Lydia so shaken. Her flawless wedding day confidence crumbled, leaving her looking suddenly small. "I don't know what Hannah's told you," she began. "She didn't need to tell me anything," William cut in. "I have eyes. I saw how you treated her tonight." Richard quickly intervened, unsettled by the scene. "Maybe we should let them get back to dancing." As they walked away, Lydia's composure was in ruins. I noticed her whispering frantically to Marion, no doubt trying to figure out who William was and how I had ended up with someone so clearly out of her league. That was satisfying, I admitted as William and I returned to the dance floor. "We're not finished yet," he murmured with a smile that made my heart skip. For the rest of the evening, William never left my side. When dinner began, he casually requested that we be seated at a better table, citing his dietary restrictions that required him to be nearer to the kitchen. The staff, well aware of Richard's family status, instantly obliged. Suddenly, we were seated at a prime table in full view of the entire reception. Everyone could see us laughing and talking like a couple completely at ease. The same friends who had ignored me earlier were suddenly eager to meet William. Richard's relatives, who had looked down on me before, now regarded me with newfound curiosity about my mysterious partner. Even Mrs. Wellington, who had suggested church groups earlier, leaned in to ask about William's background. When she discovered he was a successful tech entrepreneur with a Harvard MBA, her entire attitude shifted. "Hannah, you sly one," she exclaimed with genuine admiration. "You never mentioned you were dating someone so accomplished." But the most satisfying moment came during the garter toss. As Richard prepared to toss it to the single men, William stepped forward, radiating confidence. "Wait," Lydia blurted desperately. "William, you're not single." He looked at me, then back at Lydia with a knowing smile. "Actually, I am. Hannah and I are just taking things slow, reconnecting." The garter landed straight into his hands. Whether by fate or by Richard's aim, I'll never know. But everyone understood the symbolism. Tradition said William should place the garter on the woman who caught the bouquet. But young Chloe, Richard's cousin, had already left. "Looks like we need a volunteer," the DJ announced. William glanced at me with a silent question. I nodded. The crowd erupted in cheers as I took a seat. William knelt before me, slipping the garter gently onto my leg. Though just for show, the intimacy in his touch made the moment feel undeniably real. I caught myself wondering if the spark between us was entirely an act. Lydia's expression was pure fury. At her own wedding, she was forced to watch as her pathetic single sister became the glowing center of attention. Later that night, when the guests had left and the parking lot was quiet, William walked me to my car. "Thank you," I whispered. "I know this was all just pretend, but you saved me from the most humiliating night of my life." "What makes you think it was pretend?" he asked seriously. My breath caught. Because you don't even know me. I know enough, he replied, stepping closer. I know you're kind, even when people don't deserve it. I know you're strong. You endured a night of cruelty with grace. I know you're beautiful, inside and out. And I know your sister is blind not to see how lucky she is to have you. Tears pricked my eyes, but this time they weren't from shame. This might have started as me rescuing you, William said softly. But somewhere between the first dance and now, it stopped being an act. He handed me a sleek business card, his personal number written elegantly on the back. If you want to see me again, not for revenge, not to prove a point, just because you want to call me. My hands trembled as I took it. What if I want to call you tonight? He gave me that confident smile that first caught my attention. Then I'll answer. 3 months later, William and I were officially together. 6 months after that, we moved in. And exactly 1 year after Lydia's wedding, he proposed at the very same hotel where it had all begun. Lydia's reaction to our engagement was everything I imagined. The sister who had spent years making me feel inadequate was now forced to watch me marry a man who adored me, and whose family was even wealthier than Richard's. But the true revenge wasn't proving her wrong. It was realizing I no longer needed her approval. William's love and respect showed me my worth, and I knew I would never settle for less again. Our wedding was smaller than Lydia's, but infinitely more joyful. We didn't use it as a stage for humiliation. We celebrated surrounded by people who genuinely cared for us. Lydia insisted on being maid of honor, giving a speech about how thrilled she was for me, how she'd always known I'd find someone special. Her revisionist history was laughable, but I didn't care anymore. I had something better than her validation. I had someone who had seen my worth from the very beginning. Looking back, Lydia's wedding was the worst night of my life. Her cruelty forced me to see how I had been letting people treat me. But it also led me to William. Without that humiliation, I never would have been vulnerable enough to accept help from a stranger. Sometimes, the people who try to hurt us most end up setting the stage for the biggest blessings. Lydia wanted to make me feel worthless. Instead, she gave me the chance to meet the love of my life. The irony couldn't be more perfect. If this story reminded you that the best revenge is living well, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of karma, betrayal, and love that blooms where you least expect it. Have you ever seen someone's cruelty backfire in spectacular fashion? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the universe has a wicked sense of humor when it comes to justice.